So Leandro and I had a chat maybe a month ago about this event, and we decided for a format where we would sit down, and I'm gonna ask him a few questions. We're gonna maybe let you guys ask a few questions, and then we'll see where the conversation goes. My background is, I grew up in Italy. I've been in technology more than 20 years. I worked in a lot of fields from mobile to digital health. More recently, I worked for about 3 years in IoT. And so that's what brought me here to the conversation with Leandro. And I have a couple of notes. Leandro is an awarded IXD and UX director. He's an IoT pioneer. He's an author. We have a couple of amazing books here. You should check them out. Leandro maybe later can talk about them. He's an expert in eye tracking and AR technologies. He's contributed to a number of patents, and he's been working in design for more than 20 years. He's an executive digital director at Design Group Italia, and we can see here a couple of the things that Design Group Italia has worked on, and I'm sure Leandro has contributed. So welcome, everyone.
It would be easier to see if you could somebody could kill the lights.
So I don't think we need to lower the lights. Honestly, we had a couple of slides only for inspiration, but we're going to actually cover different things.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just a background.
All right.
Just because the projector was available.
I think the greatest thing about the iPhone, or that, the phone, is that for the first time, if I want to talk to you, and I call you at home in the old days, I get him.
Sure.
Sure.
And not you. And I wanted to talk to you. It's an individual thing rather than wide open. And I love that.
Absolutely. Actually, I think that we're going to talk about a couple of those things and the different interactions that we have with personal devices and like home devices or office devices. So thank you. That's actually a great starting point. I think, so something that I wanted to say, I've known Leandro for a few years, but at the time when we met, you were actually just visiting the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Now you're a resident. So tell us something about, like, for example, why you moved to the Bay Area from Italy.
Okay, thank you. And first of all, I moved at August 18, so it's a pretty recent thing. And being here in, let's say, in 2 months, already connected with this community, it is already a huge result. So I'm pretty curious to know who you are, why you are here, what is your interest. Probably I'm more motivated to meet each other and understand who you are than telling my story. But let's say this night, in theory, this is my role, so telling their story and why we are here. I'm Sicilian. For those that are not Italian, is the island, the largest in the Mediterranean, the one that looks a triangle. Yes, and well, in this place, the kind of weather, the kind of colors, let's say the nature, it looks pretty similar to California. So first of all, since the first moment in which I was traveling to California, I felt very welcomed by the place. But before meeting the people, just because the nature, just because the light, if you trace on the globe just a line straight from Palermo, you reach Palo Alto. So exactly there. So it's the same light. It's absolutely the same light. And let's say in a place, if you grew up in a place like that, you understand complexity, you understand diversity sometimes, because it's every place has an arbor, so you can meet people that come from all over the world in this sense. But if you want to do a work in technology, there is nothing that is there. You can try to build something, but another option is to travel another place. And I moved to Milan to learn about interaction design. And let me explain in a few seconds what I mean for interaction design. And I think you will find more or less the same definition that is possible to apply today to the Internet of Things. when we started to study and make concept and make projects about the interaction design, the goal was designing something that is not framed in a screen. Design something in terms of relation with technology that is spread into the space, that is part of your house, that travel with you inside your car, that is a technology that is embraced by the space and provided to the people, regardless of the fact that they have to take something in the end and have this relation that in some way is an option and an opportunity, in another way is also a constraint. If I see there, I can see you. And that's the point that at the beginning was the focus of interaction design. Later, well, 25 or more years were passed, so the keywords, the buzzword, the way in which the market was explaining themselves in terms of product and opportunity changed. And now we are talking about the Internet of Things, that at the end of the day is providing power to the connectivity and the intelligence to any kind of object. And again, in this sense, making real the promise of the interaction design. So I'm here and I moved in California, if you want, because the weather, because this flavor, because there is a fantastic Italian community that I would like to meet as soon as possible, but because this is the time in which we might reconnect the initial desire to have this kind of technology that are not framed on the screen with the real opportunity that the market provides. Most of those things are happening here in California right now, and this is the reason why I'm here.
That's a great story. I grew up in Milan, so I only ever dreamt of this weather. Now it's real. So connecting to what this gentleman was saying and what you're saying, let's start from something personal and close to everyone. We have this personal device that is the phone, but when we go home, we have light bulbs, we have refrigerators, we have speakers. Now, when I buy a light bulb, I usually buy, I screw it in, 2 years later it burns out, I buy another one. Then they sell me that I buy LED lights, they last 10 years. But then I buy it smart, I connect it to my Alexa or whatever, and now software changes every day. The other day I got an update on my phone, I guess I'm gonna get an update on my light bulb. How does that change my relationship to physical things that I used to buy once every 10 or 20 years?
Exactly, because, well, I was aware that this night I had the opportunity to talk with you in the contest that is also not only Italian Geeks, but also, let's say, the Italian Institute of Culture. Let's say I was searching for some information that may give you the glimpse of what in Italy is going on in terms of our traditional ability to be a manufacturer and produce things, whatever for the home, including the lights. And Il Sole 24 Ore, so the main economic journal that we have in Italy, published 2 days ago this very recent data about how Italy, from the manufacturer standpoint, is going. And it's going well. It is going crazy well. It is growing 3.8% by year. And to give you the percentage, in Germany is 2.7. In France is 1.7. So let's say there is a part of the Italy that we usually underestimate, that are the Italians that are able to build stuff. That is going pretty well. So when you talk about how is changing our life, the connectivity and the situation that we have at home, I start from the fact that we were those that built the object, the furniture, the artifacts, the beauty that we like to have every day close to us in our house, for example. But at a certain moment, if we are a little bit more critical and we want to know which kind of product, furniture, object, and technology are bringing to home, well, we should be aware that, let's say, our manufacturers are not, let's say, enough connected with the technology. On the other hand, what we are seeing here in California, I mentioned it before, through Google, with all the systems that come from Next, and they developed in the years. The last product that they just launched is the Nest Cam for the house, the IQ one. So there is some intelligence inside. And Alexa is another example. So we are seeing this raising different technologies that we are bringing along that want to change our lifestyle in some way, and we are Italian are not connected to that. If those products are something that we might consider, let's say, beautiful and perfect and, let's say, effective in some way, we might say, well, we lost the train, so they will win, we will lose. But it's not true. The companies are struggling also here in making those objects beautiful enough and, let's say, useful enough in a way in which we, as a people, inside our home will actually have it. And there is some resilience, some robustness in the relation that through our brands that we have in Italy, we build in those objects that makes possible for those objects living together with us in our home for a very long time. Your example is the bulb, but it's natural that before or later this bulb ends its life. But what about just an object that you want to have over the furniture or the furniture itself or any kind of appliances? Those are choices that we do every day, and we pick objects that will stay with us for 10 years. There is nothing like that in the technology industry right now. So the kind of object that we are producing here in Silicon Valley that are looking to the kind of things that we bring at home in this moment are not good enough to resist for more than a version. And because the updates in the hardware field is not for free, that's a problem. We risk to build just junk or something that becomes junk very quickly. In this sense, I see an opportunity. Our Italian heritage, our culture, our ability to do things, also in the numbers that I just shared with you, might be connected with a kind of fabric of innovation, with a kind of technology that is available here. If we will be able to, let's say, rejoin the conversation with the innovation as Italians, probably we have a chance to do something that is relevant. And this, I think, is much more important than anything else.
Thank you. Sorry, I feel like I have a couple of questions on my mind. So, do you think that the advantage for Italy is in the manufacturing process? Is it in the design? Or are we going to have a cloud that beats Amazon, that comes out of Bergamo or something? How is that going to happen?
Let me mention this fact. We spoke about the iPhone. So today is 2018. So 10 years ago, the iPhone wasn't there. So we are talking about something that changed completely our life, our habits, and also changed the values of companies like Samsung or Apple that now are so big that they can just carry on a whole country, and everything happened in just 10 years. So if you remember the day before the Apple was launched, well, Nokia was there and was the king. And if I try to imagine a meeting room inside Nokia, trying to, let's say, think about the next model of phone, I think their effort was totally focused on shape, positioning, materials, and very few features, because, let's say, the software that was fantastic in terms of usability was considered almost done. The kind of things that we expected that a phone was able to provide us as a service was already there. So the kind of people that we have around the table trying to figure out what is the next step in the evolution of the product and service, it is biased by the missing relevance of the software. The CEO of Nokia published a book when Nokia, let's say, collapsed, and there is a very short line that say, "I wasn't a software guy," full stop. So they missed the point. Well, in Italy we have the risk, obviously, to miss the point, and I hope no one will think that the solution is making his own Amazon. Oh, well, in Italy we did it, but yes, sorry, the government said that. Or our Amazon Web Service or things like that. This is not a run that makes sense to follow. On the other hand, again, building something that could stay relevant in the life of people for years is something that the whole software industry could learn by the brand that we have, for example, in Italy. You have a relation that starts from the trust that you have in those people that represent the brand. You have a trust that is, let's say, will come and reply that each day when you use the kind of object that you buy, whatever it is. Also, if it's a coffee maker or a fantastic sport car, this is something that is happening every day. And so, again, connected this culture is the opportunity. Trying to reply what the others are doing better than us is probably just a waste of time and resources. And by the way, our resources that we do not have, so it's not meaningful at all just to think in this direction.
Thank you. So you mentioned software, cloud. I guess I'm going to make a leap here, intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I make a small light bulb or a coffee machine intelligent? How is the relationship between local and cloud and services? How does that all kind of come together?
Well, when we talk about the reason why, at the end of the day, the object that we produce, for example, in Italy, because our, let's say, ability to do beautiful things that stay relevant in the mind of people, when we talk about that, first of all, we are talking about the identity, let's say. So you recognize a coffee machine, recognize that it is produced by a certain brand, recognize the kind of feature that you might expect. All those things are embedded into the object and are the very basic identity of this object. In the moment in which I talk, for example, about a smartphone, I know that there is some identity that is embedded in, but I also know that I could reframe completely the way in which work through a software update. Or I could change my own behavior, my own way in which I use the object, because the last update provided me something new that opened, let's say, new perspective, but in some way also shaped the identity of this object in a different way. I think that in terms of the separation between what might be in cloud, what might be local, should be based on very basic, let's say, parameters of the object itself. The identity, the way in which you relate to each other, the trust that is able to let's say, build those kind of things. And let me do an example. You might say that, we mentioned the camera from Nest before. You might choose and buy in a store a camera that have no intelligence at all. Just use it to watch the door of your house, the entrance door, and you will easily receive a notification each time that something changed. Maybe just the light that changed in the room, and you receive a notification of nothing in all the channels that you are available to let's say, receive. With a slightly more intelligent camera, you can do a little bit more. For example, you can recognize if there is a person, whatever is the identity of the person. That means that probably this camera has an intelligence that is partially local, is an algorithm that is telling what to do, that might be local or might be in the cloud. And if a person enters into the space, at this point, the camera has to decide if to take a picture and later decide what to do with the picture. Should be stored in the cloud, should be stored locally. Well, all those things are difficult to decide in terms of deciding by default what is in the cloud and what is local. But if you just had a little bit of meaning and say, well, you know, you are an intelligent camera, the person that is entering is my wife, and you know it because you are connected to my photo, and you do not have the right to take a picture of it. You have the right to take a picture of another person that is entering, and in this case, you have the right to upload this picture into the cloud because it's different from the pattern, because it's different from what is, let's say, considered normal in this kind of situation. But if you want that the camera does things like that, also the algorithm should be partially local, or at least the original behaviors of this cam should be local. Because if you buy a cam because this cam has a certain specific behaviors, you don't want that anyone could change it without, let's say, you can't do anything. So you buy a cam because this cam has a certain behavior. This behavior represent and shape the identity, the original entity of the cam. Those things should be local. Later, you can add new behaviors through updates. And the path that is in front of this object in terms of learnings are both into the cloud, so something that the cam should learn, recognizing an animal because you have all this incredible mass of data, in patterns that are pretty local. At 5 p.m. normally someone enter into the house, and most of the time I'm me, because I'm coming back from job, and I don't need that you notify me that I'm entering into the house. I know, so those kind of things. So local and global is not a technical problem. Is everything regarding to the behaviors that you want, let's say, embed into the object. This is related to the identity, and these are exactly the kind of things that we as Italian, with our tradition, with our values, could have on top of what is technically possible. And here is the place where, with technology, everything is possible.
I don't know if you saw it a few days ago. They talked about Apple and I believe Google and Amazon all coming together and praising GDPR. After 6 months ago, everyone was hating it. Now everyone loves it. So without going into the legal aspects, as a product designer, as an interaction designer, how do you balance my desire to protect my data, but also at the same time integrate maybe with my wife's phone or my camera at home or other things, and how do I find that right balance, and how do I manage it as a application or hardware designer?
Well, once again, I think personally, the answer is not in any technical way to frame the problem. And again, the way in which you frame the problem brings to you some solutions and add to your, let's say, discovery other potential path and other potential solution. Let me approach the answer in this way. I already said that I grew up in Sicily, and you can imagine how many scientists was possible to meet every day. No 1, 0. And so the alternative was science fiction. The alternative was the kind of book that you decide to read, the kind of video games that you decide to play, and the kind of movie that you decide to see. And of course, at that age, I was totally influenced by Isaac Asimov, and there are few things more elegant than 3 Laws of Robotics of Isaac Asimov. And in those stories, robots were everywhere, and those robots were much more intimate, much more present than any smartphone that you can have, than any information that you might decide to share. But no one reading this book was worried about the privacy. You know why? Because the behaviors of this robot was predictable. Not able to say it. Predictable, I say. Franco, tell for me. And this ability to predict what is happening make you, as a user, able to build a sort of trust. So those are objects, are technology, smart or super smart, let's say, is not relevant. What is relevant is if this guy or this whatever object is something that you trust. The camera in your bedroom is something that you trust. The robot in your bedroom is something that you trust. Again, it's everything about trust. You might develop trust, let's say, to this object according to how they behave. And this is something that could be related both to the rules that are, again, local and embedded in. No one can touch those rules. You decided that you want something that respects those rules, and also influenced by the brand. I'm pretty sure that before or later we will choose our car, not because the performance, but because the kind of algorithm that is promising to us some kind of behaviors in certain circumstances. The Mercedes will protect me and my family inside the car. If it's the case, probably killing the guy that is just in front of me and not seeing me, or the car will decide to hit the car versus the wall and probably, I don't know, make me some dumb. This is the way in which the object behaves. All the trust that you will develop will depend on that. Now we have Amazon, Google, Apple, the other guys. To me, is probably winning the guy that decide to respect my data much more than other. And probably I could be more interested in buying a camera, not in bedroom probably, from a brand that is promising that they will take care of my data in a very special way, rather than any other camera that has more feature, more megapixel. Who cares? It's not that the point. The new product on the internet is trust, and it's not a news, it's something that's already going on.
So trust in my personal life, in my car, in my house is one thing. How is the thinking process different when it's, for example, in the office?
Well, in the office, let's say the number of stakeholders are unnumbered sometimes, and there is no one solution that you might define the right one. What you may do, it is defining, again, the frame of the problem in a way in which the technology that we are applying is there to resolve some specific problems, and stay on the example of camera, just to be, let's say, coherent with the previous examples. You are not forced to have the same behavior from all the objects, and you might have a camera that works in a certain way during the, for example, working hour, and a camera that behaves in a different way when the office, in theory, should be totally empty. You might recognize some pattern of visitors that are, for example, the cleaning team, that is different from the pattern, the kind of movement, the kind of action, and the details that you have if, let's say, someone that is not allowed in theory to be there show up on the camera. The fact that object that has a similar functionality behaves in different ways, it is exactly the kind of things that we, again, as Italian, I think, are able culturally to address. Because, for example, can be, from point of view of material, shape, colors, and whatever, the same thing. You should be able to recognize those two different objects. So, and not a big fan of objects that are able to do anything, but when you look at that, well, they look exactly the same. I could be evil, I could be a god, but if you look at the object itself, nothing changed. And before I understand how this object is behaving to me, how it's changing me, how it's influencing me, probably it's too late. We were speaking before, drinking the beer, about the fact that also talking with Alexa is a way to get an habit as a human, to be very imperative, talking each other. Alexa, do something. Andrea, do something. Because it's just the way in which I behave, because I talk too much with Alexa. If you see how, for example, smartphone changed our way to behave, and if you see the difference that each kind of social that has a scrolling, like Pinterest, just like an example, it's a very calm interface. You can just sleeping while scrolling the page, seeing just beautiful stuff. The kind of behavior that influenced me is much different than Alexa, turn on the light. I could be gentle in the tone, but at the end of the day, it's still an order.
Sure. I wanted to last question. Whether it's in the commercial space, workspace, home, what is your favorite connected device? Is there one that you're like, wow, that was amazing? Once you saw it, you were in love with it.
Well, we are scratching the surface of the cavern right now, so there is an incredible opportunity in bringing into the future the kind of object that we would like to find in this future. And right now, what we have, it is so driven by technology that not being so particularly seducing to me. So I still preferring objects that provide me some kind of feeling and personal relation just because, I don't know, someone gifted me. And be sure that it's not a tech stuff. Not yet. We are not yet there, at least to me. One of the objects that I loved during, let's say, the last 2 years, it is, of course, one of those that we designed it. And this is just normal. I don't know if the love for this object comes from the fact that it was on our table, on our screen for a very long time, or because perhaps we were able to have to this object this small glimpse of meaningfulness that we would like to see into the future. And it's not the case that this object is probably the first machine that you can connect with your phone to make an electrocardiogram that is with the same quality of, let's say, the one that you can have in the hospital, but you don't need any doctors there. You can do it yourself, just turning the phone to you, seeing, let's say, your body, and having the instruction to place the detection sensors in the right place, and push a button, just one. You don't need anything to know in terms of healthcare knowledge to do that. But from that moment, this connected device provides you all the things that you would like to have in a hospital. Real-time answer, a real physician that is reading the detection, and all the other services that are, let's say, connected to that. And it's not a toy. It's not just a fantastic watch, without mentioning any brand, that is promised to solve the problem, and at the end of the day, it is just approaching a tiny part of the problem itself. So putting this glimpse of future into the object, it is at this moment the most meaningful thing that we can do. I heard Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, saying a few days ago, the most exciting thing in computing is happening on the edge. And to me, the edge is also this table, the desktop there at office, my pocket, my car, and exciting things is real, are happening now at the edge.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to California.
Thank you.
And with technology, when I was a boy, there wasn't any technology to me. And in the past 30 years, my God, I can remember up in Scandinavia, they made a phone, and Europe trickled down, and every country has its contribution to the world of technology. And my God, how the world has changed since technology.
Absolutely.
I'd be glad to know if it's changing for good or bad.
No, true?
It's absolutely true. Yeah.
So, I have a question. It came a little bit later on the topic of IoT, but you mentioned the idea that when you talk about privacy, we should be, say, aware of kind of the contract with the provider of the service of the object, okay, and we should go for, people will automatically go in the direction of objects and companies that are more respectful to the privacy of people, okay? And somehow my worry is that this is true if people can freely choose, but on the other side, there are many companies are already playing the game of, okay, I can give you the same object, half price, and you give up your privacy. Any comment on that?
It's the market, baby. No, I think there is nothing wrong on that. In the sense that I said before, we are just scratching the surface of the cover. Now we are learning by doing how to change ourselves, how to change the environment that we would like to have in front of us, and thinking that this path could be, let's say, walked without any mistake is just silly. So we will do many mistakes. This mistake will be made by government, by single people, by companies. We do it continuously. But if you just zoom out and see the whole path, it's a positive path. We have now powers that were just unpredictable 10 years ago. You can just press the phone and see the stars. So it's a good result. We're still learning, and probably because closer to go to the human behavior, let's say higher is the learning curve. We are learning much faster to make the right technology than to learn to use it in the right way, and that's just normal.
I think there was a question in the back.
Yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts on how does our current consumer capitalist economy constrain our design when thinking about these bigger systems, because the true value is the information and the relationships that information can provide. So thinking beyond paying for hardware, because I feel like that, you know, we're going to be giving away the hardware for free. What creates the value in your mind in the future beyond just selling hardware?
Well, it's a very complex question, obviously, and thank you for for asking that. I'm not sure if I have the whole answer. I have some piece of the puzzle, probably, of the answer, and maybe together with the other contribution, other minds, we might have a whole answer. The first piece of the answer that I have for you is that I heard this sentence from the Wired UK editor. He said that any sufficiently advanced technology is politics. Some of us were expecting indistinguishable from magic, that is the sentence from Arthur C. Clarke, but the reality is that if you have a very complex technology that affects billions of people, what you're doing actually is politics. You are changing the way in which the people decide black or white, this president or another president, things like that. So this is certainly something that we should be aware. And as designers, for example, sometimes we make some inception and building the path that brings the user to a specific decision. We do it continuously. We learned to make those things. For example, building e-commerce site. There is just one way that is straight from the chart to the payments. There is no way back most of the time. So each time that we are part of the design of something, regardless if you are the designer, the technologist, the CTO, the CFO that is paying the bill, the researcher that is leading the things, we should be directly, individually responsible for the final result. And that's the way, that's the only path that could make the technology that we have around us 1 second later as a users, the better available, the best potential solution at that time. And by the way, still a learning path.
So following up on that, you've so far talked about one future. It seems like you're talking about one future for this, whichever way it goes. But as we know, speaking of politics, Europe has a very different privacy codes than the UK does, or the EU does. than the United States. So how does that impact the products you're developing and the privacy and the morals of it and the general, you know, it seems like you have two streams of development going on here, one for the European market and one for the rest of the world that is guided by the United States.
Well, I don't know how many of you heard the questions. The part of the question that I will start to answer is regarding if we have in front of us just, let's say, one path to build the future, for example, the European way versus the US way, or we have more. And it is sure that this moment we have different options, let's say. And let me underline that we are not mentioning some of the most relevant options, because there is also the Chinese way, there is the Arabic way. There are many more people on earth than the one that we usually recognize just because we are part of the Western world. So according to some of the friends that in this moment have in Seoul or in China, we are doing a lot of things wrong in US. And those that are talking in this moment have potentially available a sort of social system like Facebook controlled by the government that could, let's say, allow the police to recognize you just because of walking on the street and see your rate in terms of behaviors. And again, there is something bad or something wrong or right in that, we don't know yet. Because the kind of civilization that is actually empowered by those technologies, well, it's something that we are building. It's not yet there. Flying cars are not there, autonomous vehicles are not there. In a society that is totally driven by our choose, the way in which we choose things on social is not there, luckily. So there are many options available.
It's almost there in the UK. I mean, they've got cameras everywhere. They're building it into all kinds of AI.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
That do not depend from any internet technology. It was already there. When I heard for the first time talking about privacy and privacy issue on social, I just noticed that walking from my house to the office at that time was meaning to cross at least 100 cameras owned by private companies, mostly banks, that are actually controlling the street all the time. So this kind of society was now, let's say, was emerging because the social was emerging because the technology in terms of storytelling reached all of us. But the control society, those kind of things, in some way was already there.
It's happening in China. I mean, you know, China has cameras.
There is a question in the back of
When you mentioned Italy manufacturing percentage, you mentioned something like 3 point, what was it?
Let me double check for you.
What was it?
I think 3 point.
Was 3.8, I think, but let me see.
Okay, go ahead.
I know, what is it? Probably the first? No. Ah, well, 3.8, right. Is an article that is coming October 24 from Il Sole 24 Ore, and data is referring, referring to 2017 and 2018. In the last 3 years, Italy grown much more than any other European country in terms of manufacturing. And again, the value is 3.8 for Italy, 2.7 for Germany, 1.7 for France.
Okay.
Those are just the example that I, let's say, extract from the article.
Here's, this is what I'm after. When you used the word actually manufacture, you really are talking about something tangible, right?
Yes.
Okay, good.
There is a factory somewhere producing something.
Something, yeah, you're talking about something tangible, okay. Now my question is, have you got the figures for the Far East, Italy versus China, Japan, and Korea, and Taiwan? Do you have those figures?
I do not have this data with me, also because it wasn't, let's say, close enough to the topic. I think in first instance, Italy is very close to Japan.
Close to Japan?
Yes, and I do not have the detail for that. But again, we are talking about one of the top 5 manufacturers into the world. It's not a B-series company or country. There is a question there.
Getting back to the topic of changing of these social structures and ideas, what's the landscape in terms of pervasive health technologies and research that's going on with health services delivered outside of the hospital to the home, where people are living, breathing, and playing?
Well, when you think about pervasive, probably is not pervasive enough, because the only way to take care of people, for example, outside the hospital, is being pervasive enough to connect some kind of device directly into the body or things like that. So at the end, there are just 2 ways. The Asimov way is giving you a wrap-up that follow you step by step and take care of you in case you are sick or you have an heart attack or whatever. So in the other, it is having something that it is connected and touch your body. It is your, let's say, doctor on the go, and you don't need to be notified or things like that, because everything should be connected with directly your insurance or the healthcare system, and they will call you if they have something to say to you directly in a, let's say, human language. And I don't know if it's pervasive enough, but this is the way that in this moment in particular, the insurances are, let's say, aiding in terms of potential future. You will pay less if you wear some kind of device, and we are just at the beginning.
And I wanted to follow up on that, because when I was at Samsung, we actually did some work in that space. I think that right now, like in the short term, so a few years, the goal of most companies is to have some sort of device that you can comfortably wear at all times, and that collects data at all times. And so the example of the Apple Watch with the ECG is a good example of where it's going. The quality of the data generated, it's still not good enough for a doctor to make an actual evaluation, but it's now at the stage of being good enough to say there's something that needs to be checked. You should, do something. So it's getting there.
I totally agree. And if I can try to make a forecast, or let's say an easy one, where I will not say when, but something that to me will be normal to think that will happen is that exactly like today, if you just forgot your phone at home, you will not comfortable the whole day. You are looking forward to the moment in which you be back home and take your phone. Exactly with this kind of feeling, you will be in, I don't know, 10 years probably, if your wearables not connected you with the insurance, with the doctor and whatever, especially in a aging part of the society. And this is probably true, as well as we should be comfortable before or later with the idea that, I don't know, in certain highways, driving as a human will be illegal because it's not safe enough. And well, I just did, together with Francesco, both the 280 and the 101 isn't safe for sure. It's insane and unsafe. She raised the hand minutes before.
So I have like 2 questions, maybe.
Just one and
one
then
idea. Yeah, so I'm gonna go quick. One question was about what you said about these new products, that they don't have enough, like their design is not powerful to become object that we recognize, and like they're gonna not stick around for more than a couple of years. But I don't know if it says something close to what I mean to say, is like these objects are designed to not stick for more than 1 year, so that next year we're gonna buy a new version of the iPhone. So who has the interest in building an object that will be around, that will be like we will love so much that we don't want to buy the new version? Like this is not how the like circle of this economy works, because technology is not part, it's not something that I mean, it's art until a certain point, so it's made to like be replaced all the time. Okay. Second element.
Okay.
I work with Alexa on a daily basis, and what you said about the interaction, that we give the imperative is like it's very interesting from the communication point of view, because when we interact with a robot, our relation is not based on like all the other aspects that affect an interaction with a human, like can be kindness, can be like building a bond or something, is about efficiency. So the time that requires me to give an imperative, a command, is like 1/3 less than the time that I take to formulate the question. So like from the user perspective, it's true that I'm gonna get used to give orders to robots because that's the communication, but also from a functional perspective is more efficient to say turn on the light than to say, oh, could you please turn on the light? Like that's like not the interaction I would from my robot. And from the third aspect, yeah, I said three questions.
I should take some notes.
The wearable technologies that is interesting because it can help us, like monitor our health, like get trends about the population, help, like maybe even fight some major diseases like cancer. If we can monitor the population, if we have all this data, we can understand, where are the sources. But at the same time, like maybe not in Europe, but in the US, like there is a huge market for insurance. And let's say that Apple collects all these data about the population. And then like maybe right now Apple is strong enough to like make the rules, but at some point, because that's is the history of every company, they will in this situation of not having that much money, and who will keep them because it's a private company to selling all out or like health data to insurance company. That's a huge market in the United States, like $1 billion market value. So what would keep them to share value this data?
Okay. I took notes a couple of points, so I will try to answer to the one that I remember. If I lose something, please, let's say, recall me. The first very interesting question, or part of the question, was why we should, let's say, build objects that could stick with the humans for years if our main goal is just to replace it in 1 year. Well, actually, sorry, I'm totally in another opinion. Because we say that you can have part of the identity of the object that is embedded in, and there is a part of the value that the object brings to you that is software somewhere in the cloud, it is very efficient in terms of economy, leaving to me the same hardware, having this very strong relation, and just update the rest via software. Is like, I don't know, you buy a Tesla, you know that car should stick with you at least for years, let's say much more than a phone, and you can update anytime remotely. And this is, I think, the way. And anything that must be replaced, atoms by atoms, with someone that brings to you the box out the door, with a new integration with your existing system, with a new startup moment, with a new learning curve. It's not economic at all. I think it's the bad way of thinking about how the digital technology should be pervasive in our life, in our home, in all the other places where we want to live supported by the technology. This is just the wrong way of the consumers. And I don't know, it's just wrong. I don't know how to say it.
I agree with you, just that if we have to understand how the system works to like bring different value and
probably, and again, I'm not here just to say just good thing about Italy. Probably having some other kind of talent represented in the room, not just the software engineers and some graphic designer, might be, let's say, a good advice. Maybe if there are people that were able to build brands, objects, and services that are able to stay on the market for 20 years, these are not just boring. There is something to learn. It is exactly the same approach that I would like that our manufacturers in Italy have with those software guys. There is something to learn. So it's just a cultural diatriba, any change that is potentially possible. I would like just to mention another part of your question, because it's very close to you. So Alexa and, let's say, being imperative or other things, wording and questions, please Alexa, can you turn on the light? This is again, to me, let's say the wrong approach. What I mean when I talk about not being imperative, I didn't mention it, a potential alternative solution, but it's already there. When I raise the phone, this model of phone, the phone recognizes the gesture and recognizes me. And this is just the beginning, because we can do something that allow, for example, to Alexa, why not? To recognize what I'm doing, if I'm in the room, first of all, what I'm doing, if the light is enough. If I'm reading, here on the table, there is not enough light. Why should not be Alexa in a very practical way to say, hey, Leandro, do you want that I turn on the light? So being proactive is the key. Executing order is just prehistoric. It's not digital at all. It's mechanic. It's not digital. There is no intelligence in that. This is, again, an opinion. Last question, probably?
Oh no, I have a question.
I don't know, Franco.
Okay, yeah, I think
I'm not
it's
the other
discussion very interesting, so I will stretch the time a little bit tonight.
Do we get paid
As you
extra?
wish.
Do we get paid extra?
Oh, yes, I'm gonna double the pay.
More cold beer. What is the question?
Oh, the question I have was that you speak from a perspective from your culture, where you come from, and you talk about manufacturing and the integrity of what we have for the object, right, in manufacturing. And then we talk about the future in wearables and your interest in technology. And so I'm curious as to how you see those two industries overlapping, or becoming a hybrid of some sort.
Well, this is the most tricky question that I could have, and I'm sure I do not have an answer yet, because again, if we talk about wearables, so things that we would like to have on our body, well, this is a desert right now. There is nothing that is, at least to me, the kind of knowledge that I have, that is meaningful enough to stick, let's say, in the relevance of a person for more than the time that is just needed to use it. In Samsung-ArtiK Italia in Italy, we did a very extensive research on wearable devices. I mean that we bought anything was available worldwide by more than 250 different wearables and testing it with more or less 60 people for 3 months. Huh. And we said, if you like something, you can have it for free. So at the end of the day, when let's say, at the end of the experience, you finish the test. If you like it, you can have it. And just 2 people in 60 decided to retain the object. So it's a total failure. If you see the jewelry, for example, as a field, in theory, we might have a huge experience in Europe in making things that you might love to wear. But the basic rules of that industry are the opposite of the conditions that are needed for a wearable that we need to wear. Because today I'm in black and I want to wear something, tomorrow I will be in orange, I want to have something else. So if we are talking about hidden patches that you have sticked in your body, those are medical devices and something it is starting to emerge. But anything that we have on the market may feel you unhealthy, may feel you a patient. It is not something that you are loving to have, it is something that you need to have. And all the rest, again, it's a field of opportunity, and right now I don't see anyone to have a receipt.
Yes, so let's say I got a question. So about radiation, and quickly about, I'm thinking of the Italian family, get together, dinner, all talk and all that, and just like here, everybody's on their smartphone. Because as far as everything's changing, the way people relate. one is
Okay.
our constant invasion or.
I don't know if you want to be part of the answer.
Okay.
For some of us,
I
we're
think
sensitive to it.
the official answer on radiation, there's no proof that it hurts.
Okay, I will
Of
tell
course
them.
there is
What
some.
about the chips they embed in their
Right.
machine in Sweden?
Right.
So I would like to provide at least a part of the
Yeah, what was the
answer.
part about the social aspect?
Yes,
Social
that-
part
that-
was
that-
the
that part is-
interesting part to me, right? Right?
Okay.
If you go to a cafe, if it's
Okay.
here or in Italy, the
Again.
whole thing was very important, getting together, the family and friends for dinner, talking, and now.
You know that the same thing was said when the book was introduced. Okay, without the joke about the book, but it's real. What if right now a third arm appear in your body? So at this point you have another one, and you have to learn how to use it. You have to build a new relation with that. You have to understand what is possible to do with that. Try to imagine a new brain or an extension of your brain. This will change everything. It is less visible than a third leg to you, but it is actually visible to all the others. Well, part of your brain is not anymore, let's say, inside your body. Part of your brain is on your phone. So disconnecting you by your phone, it is not just a good habit when you have dinner with the family. It is a disconnection of part of your body that is going on. It's a part of your memory that is instantly loosened. It is a part of your sensors that is immediately, let's say, turned off. It's the third ear and the third pair of eyes, the eyes that you have in your head that are closed. And I'm not sure that we have the right to preserve our, let's say, habits in terms of education, in terms of the dinner with the family, turning off and on the sensors that are natural evolution of the human being according one rules that is not the one that we want for ourselves. It's not to me to say what is educated, what is normal. It's a new sensor, so it's a new part of your body. You should take care of it.
But what about the side effects of that? The side effects of the usage?
Again,
Loss of focus,
scratching the surface of the cavern, the wall of the cavern, we have to learn a lot. And there are thousands of signals of potential threats and potential big mistakes in the way in which we are growing, for example, the digital natives. And again, we should learn and the technology should be better. Right now, I think the maximum degree of freedom is the only potential path, the only possible path, because it's the experimental way. We have to learn what is working and what is not, and being able to change the route, and that's the trick part, changing the route.
But I think we have a responsibility to provide ethical guidelines and do research.
Sorry, I lost you.
I think we have a responsibility to provide ethical guidelines and to do the research, not to promote harm, especially for young kids.
I'm not for
follow-up
sure the person that would like to write this ethical guidelines, and I don't know who should be able to do it. I don't know. Trump, Obama, I don't know. The Nobel Prize, who should write this?
The EU is doing it. Horizon 2020.
I'm not sure though. Not sure. Anything could happen in the next 5 years to change completely our society.
Apple's doing it.
I have a follow-up on that, if I could.
Really last one.
Yes.
I think I can follow up on it. On the way over, I was reading an excellent article. By the way, I share your optimism on the future of AI and better objects and IoT. I was reading an article, Artificial Ignorance, and New Scientist, excellent article, and they bring up some points on privacy and morals of the new world order. But specifically now we are the brand or capitalism or programmers are controlling deciding the morals of the devices. It's embedded in there, they get to make the call, we don't. Consumers, you don't really have a lot of choice on between the more private and the less private device. You buy an iPhone or you buy an Android, but it's pretty much, you've lost your ID. Either way, the Facebooks, all the apps, all the stuff is out there. So my question is, how do you see optimism for us getting back that control of our privacy in this capitalist order? Okay. He's shaking his head. So. And you can repeat the question.
Well, because partially I already answered. Again, we already saw potential future where the technology is so intimate and so pervasive, like Asimov shown in his book, and we weren't worried about the privacy issue. That's because the kind of rules that were embedded into those kind of technology make us not only aware of what this technology will bring to us, but also, let's say we've had the trust to this object. That's the main point. So I think that is a normal path of evolution of the technology, the one in which before or later the Facebook guy, the Google guy, the Uber guy, it's more or less represented here in the room, should take some very hard decision about how they want to behave, because there is no Asimov that will write for them the 3 rules of robotics, so they should be able to regulate themselves. And as I said before, because any sufficiently advanced technology is politics, you will see the difference in terms of political party or political ideas. I met recently, just being attendant in a conference, both Jeff Bezos and Jack Dorsey, so Twitter and Amazon. 2 totally different ways of considering the future, and 2 totally different ways to perceive themselves as responsible, directly responsible for what we have right now. So we depend in this moment from those guys in a certain sense. But just delete Facebook if you like, just delete Twitter if you like. It's so easy, like going to the supermarket and decide if you want to buy the Walmart or the Whole Food or the other, if you want to buy from Procter & Gamble or from other. We, the consumer, is still in charge ever. And coming to you, and the effect of tons of users that change their behavior is almost immediate, because each quarter, according to the number of users, not buyers, just users that are doing his own decision, well, those are public companies. The value change immediately.
But will enough consumers value their privacy to make that change? They don't now.
The time is over.
The
time is over.
Okay, thank you everybody for coming tonight. And in your way out, you will see there is a box for donation. I always forget.